How dare you defy me?
Please, my lord, I meant no disrespect.
Hey guys, tonight we kick off a haunting journey to uncover the true person behind the glittering crown of Henry VIII, the six-time married king who turned his wedding nights into inescapable nightmares, where his queens never knew if they'd make it to dawn, or what terrors awaited them the moment they stepped beneath the royal dome. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Where are you watching from? And what time is it there? Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You think you know Henry VIII, the six-time married king who founded the Church of England. In reality, there are plenty of details that history textbooks shy away from. Right from the start, I want you to lean back, close your eyes for a moment, and reimagine the whole picture. Because Henry VIII was far worse than anyone could imagine. He wasn't just a flamboyant monarch, he was a gluttonous meat and wine machine with a colossal body, so massive he needed pulleys and levers to move around the palace. Did you know Henry's waist measured 54 inches, taller than the average person? He weighed around 400 pounds, while an average man back then tipped the scales at about 140 pounds. But obesity wasn't even the scariest secret. His legs were colossal abscesses, oozing sores with decaying flesh that fell onto the floor like debris, causing his servants to scamper away every time they got close. The stench was so overwhelming that everyone held perfumed cloths to their faces when approaching him. Even the shoe boys had to draw lots to see who'd be lucky enough to touch that horrific skin. And then there's the even more gruesome post-mortem detail. Henry's corpse decomposed to such an extent that gases built up inside and literally blew his coffin apart.
We must leave
Imagine
now,
that
we are
scene.
lost.
Splintered wood and human remains scattered down the streets of London, a stench so powerful it drove everyone and the stray dogs running away. Picture that at midnight, and you'll feel your pulse quicken in the dark. But Henry VIII didn't stop at monstrous feasts and festering wounds. He also lived in crippling paranoia. He was convinced everyone sought to kill him. So he set up countless spy networks, eavesdropped on his own children, and tunneled secret escape passages. In his bedchamber, bows and daggers were stocked by his pillow, and armed guards kept watch through the night. How would you sleep under those circumstances? Just hearing doors creak in a room like that would make your heart race. Surprisingly, despite 6 queens, Henry only beheaded 2. The rest endured psychological torments far worse than execution. They were forced to sign divorce papers on their wedding night, confined, falsely accused of adultery, and made to watch their loved ones beheaded right before their eyes. Every honeymoon night, instead of romantic warmth, they faced the terror of not knowing if they'd see dawn. So tonight, as you nestle under your cozy blankets with dim lights, remember, a wedding night with Henry VIII was never a dreamy fairy tale. It was the beginning of a haunting saga, where darkness hid the horrifying truths of the throne and unchecked power. Have you ever wondered what's more terrifying than anything in a decaying royal body? It's Henry VIII's massive frame in his final days, a relentless meat machine eating and rotting from within. Close your eyes for a moment, breathe slowly, and picture his waist measuring 54 inches taller than many of us. At around 400 pounds, that's over 3 times the average weight of men in that era, enough to send shivers down anyone's spine. But obesity wasn't even the worst catastrophe. The truly horrifying part was the abscesses on his legs. These were no mere sores, they were gigantic, necrotic ulcers, constantly oozing pus, with decaying flesh flaking off like dark scabs. The stench was so pungent that courtiers and visiting dignitaries had to shove perfumed handkerchiefs, sometimes the finest linen, over their noses every time they approached the king's bed. Records even note that the smell permeated multiple chambers, shrouding the palace in a black fog. Can you imagine royal attendants having to draw lots to see who was fortunate enough to tend to the king? Anyone who touched those ghastly wounds faced a special kind of punishment. The dampness, the gooey pus, the stench all combined into a medical nightmare that made people tremble, unable to look his legs in the face. Sometimes attendants used long wooden poles to adjust his medical bandages, avoiding direct contact. But even with indirect handling, the odor clung to every breath. He lay there like an animated corpse, his body incapable of healing, the ulcers spreading like black fungi invading a once mighty fortress. Did you know that, according to chronicles, just a gentle breeze through the windows was enough to make courtiers flee, pinching their noses? The Tudor palace, once alive with music and echoing footsteps, was now dominated by the sound of people recoiling, and the rustle of silk hurriedly lifted away. Whenever he shifted on his bed, everyone around held their breath, fearing a scream of agony and the inevitable confrontation with the king's rotting reality. His massive body and those horrific sores also laid bare Henry's loneliness. Once the center of the world, he had become a lump of festering flesh. No one dared come near. No one wanted to care for him. Picture those long nights, flickering candlelight, and only his faint moans, and the stench seeping through closed doors. Is there any joy in a king's life that decays so completely? In that ghastly decay, you see the tragic end of unchecked power, a sovereign revered and feared, now reduced to a living horror show. And that, dear viewer, is the somber reminder that even the mightiest throne can crumble into oblivion one rotten ulcer at a time. In 1536, Henry VIII stepped into a jousting tournament, a knightly contest famed for valor. But this time, a lance grazed his head and sent him crashing to the ground like a felled tree. He lay there, unconscious, for 2 hours, an interval modern medicine deems a severe traumatic brain injury. From that moment on, he ceased to be the fierce, battle-ready monarch. The first sign was relentless headaches. He'd clutch his skull, wince in pain, and slip into bewilderment. The mind that once commanded an entire kingdom began to fracture. Henry became psychologically unstable, sometimes brimming with resolve and vigor, other times enveloped in profound despair and disorientation. Depression hit like a storm, draining his willpower completely. But the aftermath wasn't just mental. He ballooned in weight at an alarming pace. His body seemed to hoard every morsel ingested food, drink, even excess fat. According to historical records, his weight rose by dozens of pounds within months, turning his already massive waist into an even more imposing girth. Pimples erupted across his skin, particularly on his neck and back, leaving him itchy and uncomfortable, yet too afraid to scratch any pressure on those inflamed bumps would burst them open, bleeding profusely. Today, experts believe Henry VIII suffered from Cushing's syndrome, a hormonal disorder caused by excess cortisol. This condition explains his symptoms: truncal obesity, a moon-shaped face, acne, patchy hair loss, and wild mood swings. Imagine waking to a swollen face in the mirror, horrifying, but for Henry, this was his daily reflection, an unrecognizable countenance staring back. Tragically, his court physicians, though aware of the signs, dared not suggest treatment. Any mention of the king's health equated to treason. Picture that. Attendants standing silently by his bed, watching him writhe in agony, yet no one dared speak out. Henry's physical and emotional isolation reached a peak. In his final years, the tragedy escalated. He lost control of his bowels. The prospect of using the chamber pot became a nightmare. He feared an accident at any moment. His courtiers had to invent a special mobile throne, wheels under the seat and a pulley system for lifting and lowering, complete with sturdy armrests. Whenever he needed to move, the entire retinue would heave on the ropes, the pulley whining like an abandoned clock in the castle. Now, imagine that scene. A mechanical chair rattling through corridors lit by flickering candles, accompanied by Henry's faint groans whenever he shifted. The Tudor palace, once echoing melodies and steady footsteps, now reverberated with the squeak of wheels and the pungent odor of medieval medicinal herbs. Each movement reminded the once grand sovereign that his body had become a prison, entrapped by the cold mechanics of decay and unhealable psychological wounds. So, you see, the jousting accident in 1536 didn't just injure Henry VIII, it unleashed a cascade of suffering, crippling headaches, erratic moods, dramatic weight gain, Cushing syndrome, and that bizarre mobile throne. A single blow led to a relentless decline, dismantling a ruler of unparalleled authority and leaving behind a legacy of horror for future generations to whisper about. So you've journeyed with me through the painful twists and hidden horrors of Henry VIII's life, from his gargantuan frame to his heart-wrenching isolation.
The guards are coming for us.
Now, steel yourself as we dive into the most critical section, the unspeakable terrors faced by his 6 queens on their wedding nights. If you haven't already, be sure to hit like and subscribe so you don't miss the upcoming spine-chilling chapters. Everyone only knows that 2 of Henry VIII's 6 wives were beheaded, but their wedding nights held psychological horrors far beyond mere executions. We begin with his first wife, Catherine of Aragon, the Spanish princess of Ferdinand and Isabella, who should have enjoyed a night of ceremony and joy. Instead, she entered Greenwich Palace, weighed down by dread. From the very first moment, Catherine was led to the wedding bed in a candlelit chamber, not to revel in bliss, but to endure suspicion. Henry, after days steeped in the aroma of wine and fatty feasts, was not always warm. He had once implied that Catherine respected him, but failed to ignite passion. She felt an ominous silence as everyone waited to see if she could fulfill her duty. The bridal chamber was eerily quiet, devoid of courtly music. Catherine heard only the guards' boots, the rustle of heavy drapes, and her own quickened breaths. She wondered, is this truly the first night of a queen's life, or the start of an inescapable nightmare? The air felt stifling. The waxy candle scent masked the fear and loneliness. Catherine tried to calm herself by quietly reciting prayers, but each invocation echoed alongside Henry's exasperated sighs. He would sometimes grin mockingly, then abruptly turn away, leaving her stranded in uncertainty, unsure whether to offer a polite smile or remain silent. A creeping fear of failing to produce a son began to haunt her, despite her initial confidence in her royal destiny. Throughout the night, Catherine endured waves of emotion. Hope that she might be accepted, utter confusion over her husband's unpredictable moods, and sheer terror at the heavy click of the locked door. She could only hug herself in the dim gloom, imagining the phantom of power and political schemes lurking just beyond the bed. That wedding night ended not with laughter, but with heavy sighs and silent tears of a young woman lost within the gilded halls. Catherine entered marriage with unwavering faith, but soon realized the throne was no sanctuary. It was a maze of suspicion and ruthless ambition. You hear the clock ticking slowly, tick by tick, each second reminding Catherine of how long the night has dragged on. All night long, she did not close her eyes even once. Imagine yourself lying in the most lavish bridal chamber in Europe, yet your mind is tossed by endless waves of anxiety. Catherine of Aragon, whose full name is Catalina de Aragon, was born in the year 1471, the eldest daughter of King Ferdinand, the Fortunate, and Queen Isabella the Catholic. She grew up in the magnificent Alhambra Palace in Granada, nurtured in the radiant glow of Spain's Reconquista. From childhood, Catherine received a strict education. She studied Latin from the age of 6, mastered Italian, and even a few phrases of French, and became well versed in the Holy Scriptures and Christian literature. She had 2 younger brothers, Juan and Ferdinand, and a younger sister, Juana, who would later become Queen of Castile. Her royal lineage taught Catherine early on that power is born of responsibility and that personal happiness must give way to family duty. Catherine's journey to England began with a political alliance between 2 great powers. In the year 1504, at the age of 22, she was married to Arthur, Prince of Wales, the eldest son of King Henry VII and Queen Elizabeth.
You're going to be all right.
When Arthur died only months after the wedding, Catherine became a young widow. Yet thanks to her service to the English crown in campaigns against France, she remained in London. 3 years later, Henry Arthur's younger brother, then 28 years old, married her in his brother's place, officially making Catherine Queen of England. That union marked a turning point. She went from Spanish princess to Queen of England, bearing the title Queen Consort, until she bore a male heir. Now, in the bridal chamber, all the glorious images of her past lay shattered by overwhelming confusion. Catherine spent the entire night awake, sitting at the edge of the bed, hands clasped in prayer. She thought of her parents, of the sunlit Alhambra Palace in Spain, of late-night lessons with the friars, but could not fathom how many political traps lay ahead. Regret gnawed at her as she wondered, Should I have agreed to marry someone I barely know? Is this misstep sending my fate spiraling downward? The pressure intensified when Catherine recalled her mother's instruction. You must bear a son. In her mind echoed the whispered words of courtiers. Without a prince, the alliance between our houses will crumble. The Spanish princess will be cast aside. That thought made her shiver, a cold sweat trickling down her brow. She told herself, I must remain strong. I must prove my worth, even if this haunting wedding night etches fear into my heart. When the clock chimed the second hour, Catherine tried to close her eyes, but the flickering candlelight on the ceiling kept her wide awake. She felt her body trembling beneath the silky sheets, each chill running down her spine. Have you ever lain in a place of luxury, yet felt as if you were lying in a damp crypt? That was her sensation, both overwhelmed and paralyzed. In the rare moments of mental clarity, Catherine harbored a simple longing. If only I could be in the Hampton Court Gardens right now, gazing at the roses and listening to the birds. But that reverie vanished with Henry's heavy footsteps entering the room. Her heart clenched. Would the king have the patience to understand a young wife's fears? Or would he simply regard her as a political pawn to be replaced if she did not fulfill her duty? Each time, Henry tapped lightly on the bed's edge, a simple sound reverberating in her chest like a funeral drum. Catherine knew she had no choice but to face it. She told herself, I must be brave, must smile when he speaks, must appear enthusiastic before the courtiers. Yet inwardly she longed for the dawn's light, for her solitude and dread to temporarily recede, granting her a moment's peace before the storm to come. Finally, when the last candle guttered out near sunrise, Catherine, too weary to close her eyes, could only lie there clutching her pillow and whisper a prayer. Grant me strength, O Lord, that I may endure this first night's trial. In that moment, she realized that the life of a queen is not merely a glittering crown, but an unending series of battles against fear and suspicion, a long journey only just beginning. After that haunting wedding night, Catherine of Aragon's life did not grow any calmer. On the first day after her marriage, she awoke to the dying glow of candlelight, the silken sheets still warm from the previous night. But instead of blessings, she was thrust into courtly rituals, the vows ceremony, a Thanksgiving mass, and a grand procession.
The accounts
and you
are
know,
settled, my lord.
when your mind is still
the figures
churning
are
with,
correct.
did I make
Very
the right
well.
choice?
Then
Endless
the
pageantry
transaction is
only
concluded.
amplifies your terror. A queen's first duty was to conceive. Catherine fully understood that pressure. The entire kingdom awaited a prince. Each morning, she reported to the royal nurses and chambermaids for health checks, then attended lavish feasts. Meals were never just meals. They served as tests to prove her body's capacity to nurture a royal heir. Can you imagine the weight of every courtier's glance at your stomach? They
Please, you must
scrutinized every
listen to
minute
me.
movement as if
If we
anticipating
don't
the
act
first
now,
stirrings of life.
everything we hold
The first
dear will be
month
lost.
passed in despair. Catherine showed no signs of pregnancy. She began feeling the stares and hearing whispered doubts behind her back. Does the Spanish princess have a womb problem? Or maybe it's time to find another candidate. Anxiety replaced her initial excitement. Every corridor of Windsor felt ominous, the glittering chandeliers blinding rather than brightening her spirits. She heard the court ladies giggle, as though awaiting her downfall. After 2 months, Catherine was allowed to return to the Alhambra to recover physically and mentally under her family's care. Yet her heart remained heavy. Each return to London felt like stepping into a tightening vice, the palace lights burning with cold scrutiny. She turned to incessant prayer, hoping for a miracle prince. Night after night, she knelt before the altar, listening to wind howling through the shutters, whispering, "Grant me strength to endure this trial." Heal. When the third quarter of her first year expired, Catherine's pregnancy was declared impossible, a devastating blow. The royal council convened swiftly. Should her marriage be annulled on the grounds of unsuitability? Henry VIII began to grow distant, his face as cold as ice whenever Catherine approached. The pressure crushed her, inflicting unimaginable pain.
And so
The palace
our theme
became an arena,
concludes.
and
If
she,
we
the lone
shadows have
combatant
offended,
fighting for both her
think but
life
this,
and her
and
title.
all is
Yet Catherine
mended.
refused to yield, recalling her parents' exhortation. Power belongs to the resolute. She sought support from Spanish nobles and the Holy See, hiding any suspicion surrounding her marriage. Secret letters were dispatched, pleas for papal intervention flew across Europe in ink and tear-stained missives. Each night, when the palace fell silent, Catherine toiled by candlelight, drafting appeals to secure her place in this maelstrom of power. Now picture Catherine stepping into the castle courtyard, her cloak heavy on her shoulders, her eyes a mix of determination and sorrow. She was waging war not merely to bear a son, but to preserve the honor of both the Spanish crown and the English throne. The months following her wedding were no honeymoon. They were a life-or-death odyssey, where Catherine confronted both physiological fears and political conspiracies. So you've journeyed with me through Catherine of Aragon's haunting days, from her terrifying wedding night to the tense months beside the throne. Now, clutch your blanket, fluff your pillow, and steel yourself for the next chapter. The unspeakable terror experienced by Henry VIII's second queen, Anne Boleyn, on their very first night together. Anne Boleyn, whose full name is Anne Boleyn, was born around the year 1491 in Hurstpierpoint, Sussex. She was the daughter of Thomas Boleyn, a powerful noble at the English court, and Lady Elizabeth Howard of the Duke of Norfolk's lineage. The Boleyn family was wealthy, likened to the right hand of King Henry VII, thanks to their military and political contributions. Anne had two younger brothers, George and William, and a younger sister, Mary, who later married into English nobility. From childhood, Anne received a rigorous education. She spoke fluent French, Latin, and some Italian, and was sent to the French court as a lady-in-waiting, where she learned graceful etiquette, European culture, and developed a love for poetry and courtly music. Anne's path to the throne began when she returned to England and captured the attention of Henry VIII, by then bored with the cautious, reserved Catherine of Aragon. Henry became enamored by Anne's agility, wit, and proud charm. In the year 1536, stepping in for his late brother Arthur, Henry married Anne, making her queen in a ceremony comparatively simple to other power marriages. At the moment the crown was placed upon her head, Anne felt a blend of joy and unease. She sensed the enormous burden to sit beside the most powerful king in Europe, produce a male heir, and validate the Boleyn lineage. She wondered, can I fulfill this duty? Will my prince maintain peace between England and France? The pressure grew when she recalled her father, Thomas Boleyn's words. You must bear a prince, otherwise the Boleyn name will vanish. In her mind echoed the courtier's whispers.
Let us
Without
reflect
a prince,
upon the lessons
Anne
of
will be merely a
charity
temporary
and
replacement.
humility.
These thoughts
For
brought
these
Anne
are the
regret.
cornerstones of
She
our
questioned
faith.
whether the Queen's path demanded too much sacrifice of personal freedom and happiness. The splendid banquets and the crowd's adoration could not mask the loneliness and fear lurking at every turn. Each morning, Anne faced midwives checking her reproductive health, physicians palpating her abdomen, and nobles inquiring about pregnancy. Every embrace of Henry stirred the fear within her. Is she pregnant or not? Anne sought to fortify her spirit by writing letters to her parents, seeking solace in music to wash away tension, and occasionally meeting influential nobles to bolster her standing. But when night fell, Anne was tormented by the fear. Will I still be queen tomorrow? The relentless tide of Tudor court power tolerated no misstep. She understood that dazzling throne could consume the life and honor of anyone unable to maintain resolve. Did you know that Anne Boleyn's wedding night took place on the 25th of May, 1533? Close your eyes, take a gentle breath, and imagine stepping into the sumptuous bridal chamber at Whitehall Palace, once a free-spirited young woman at Parisian court functions, now on the threshold of a perilous royal world. Anne entered the room as dusk settled, candlelight dancing across gilded walls and deep crimson carpets. The air felt heavier than any ceremony she had ever witnessed. She recalled the laughter at the wedding banquet, but now only the echo of guards' footsteps in the corridors remained. The heavy wooden door slammed shut behind her, sealing off her familiar world and ushering in a profound solitude. Her heart pounded as she touched the silk-covered bedpost. She glimpsed the intricately embroidered pillows and smooth silk sheets, yet dared not linger, fearing that a moment's comfort would unleash her rising anxieties.
And so we
The scent
find
of rose
ourselves
petals,
in this
meant
sacred
to mask
space,
the wax, now
reflecting
mingled
on the
with broken
timeless
licorice
wisdom
undertones
passed
beneath
down
the
through
flickering
generations.
flames. Each waft of fragrance whispered, "You've left behind your old life to enter this labyrinth of royal intrigue." Henry appeared amid jade and silk, impeccably dressed, yet his gaze was far from warm. Instead, it bore into her like a predator sizing up prey. Have you ever felt goosebumps simply from someone's piercing stare? That was Anne's sensation, equal parts exhilaration and terror. She forced a smile when Henry asked perfunctory questions. "Are you comfortable?" Or, "Is the chamber warm enough?" But the smile barely held inside. She wrestled with the question. Can I produce a prince to secure the throne? Will Henry's curiosity turn to disappointment? As Henry approached, Anne felt her pulse skip a beat. She heard the delicate rustle of lace brushing her underarm, the soft friction of fabric against skin that made her shiver. She recalled peaceful European evenings where she sang
I had
freely.
to see you consequences be damned.
Every subtle touch of Henry on
I
those
couldn't let you
priceless
leave without
sheets
knowing
felt
the
like a
truth.
reminder. You are queen now, no longer a carefree girl. All night, Anne could not find rest. She lay cocooned in costly silk, ears straining for every sound, wind whispering through the shutters, the gentle snap of curtains, Henry's soft sighs. She wondered, do I have the courage to live under such calculating smiles? Just before dawn, as the last candle burned low, Anne rose, pillow wet with tears and sweat. She sat at the edge of the bed, acknowledging to herself, this first night is not a gateway to bliss, but the start of a grueling trial. She whispered a final prayer. Grant me strength, O Lord, that I may not falter beneath this crown's weight. After months of wavering between hope and the pressures of the throne, Anne Boleyn's life ended in unavoidable tragedy. Once she failed to bear a prince, Henry VIII turned his back on her with astonishing speed. From her lofty position as a powerful queen, Anne was swiftly accused of adultery, treason, and plotting to kill the king, charges fabricated by Henry himself and his courtiers to strip her of power. Throughout her trial, Anne maintained a proud and composed demeanor. She did not beg or plead. She simply insisted on her innocence until the very end. In her final days, Anne was imprisoned in the Tower of London, where she listened to the guards' boots echoing down the cold corridors and the tolling bell that signaled her impending execution. She spent her time praying, writing farewell letters to her parents and sister, and bracing herself for her fate. On the morning of the 17th of May, 1536, Anne Boleyn donned a black Tudor cap and a purple robe, the royal colour of mourning, to mount the scaffold. Before kneeling, she glanced once toward the tower, as if whispering a final goodbye to the royal dreams she had built. The executioner's sword fell in a single, clean stroke, severing her life and leaving a lasting mark on the court and the history of England. Anne's death was not merely a personal tragedy, but also a testament to the cruelty of absolute power. Her name was expunged from official records, and the image of the young, vibrant queen was buried beneath the dusty stones of Westminster Abbey, where her body was laid to rest, where she should have been honoured in glory. Posterity remembers her not only for her tragic end, but for the fierce spirit of a woman who dared to love, to resist, and to accept the price of her convictions. Thus, from the eager young woman who first entered the palace to the majestic queen on the throne and finally to the victim of courtly intrigue, Anne Boleyn wrote a chapter of Tudor history saturated with blood and tears. But the Tudor saga did not end here. Next, we will meet the third wife, Jane Seymour, who brought Henry VIII a brief moment of peace and ultimately bore him his long-awaited son. Stay tuned for the next installment to discover her very different fate. On the 25th of June, 1536, as the final glow of sunset dyed Hampton Court pink, Jane Seymour slowly entered her bridal chamber. By day, there had been laughter and cannon fire. Tonight, only the echo of guards' footsteps on the cold stone corridor remained. Can you imagine that feeling? In a grand palace, Jane found herself confined to a space barely large enough for her lonely heart and racing mind. When the heavy wooden door shut, the day's revelry was swallowed whole. Jane thought, do I deserve this title? She looked around. The white silk bed embroidered in gold, Aubusson tapestries lining the walls, alabaster vases emanating lavender scents. Everything appeared perfect, yet fear surged within her like a gathering tide. First, Jane feared she might fail to produce a prince. She had heard the stories of Catherine of Aragon and the tragedy of Anne Boleyn, both punished for not fulfilling their duty. Whenever she heard Henry's quiet breath beside her, her heart ached. Does he truly place his hopes in my future child? Could she manage it? That pressure weighed heavier than any sword. Second, Jane feared betrayal from those around her. Clearly, she was not Henry's first choice, but the king who had weathered a storm of marriages. She wondered, will I be falsely accused of adultery or treason like the queens before me? Every step in the darkness felt like a reminder. The court was not a place for the faint-hearted. Third, she feared herself. Jane felt compelled to be flawlessly gentle, to comfort the king in his irritability, and to smile for the courtiers' chatter. She had no right to show fatigue or doubt. Every word, every gesture had to be perfect, like a precious gem admired by a throng. The pressure to be impeccable seemed to strangle her spirit. Fourth, Jane feared loneliness. There was no genuine friendship among the lady-in-waiting sisters. No parents nearby, only the invisible expanse of power. She wondered, is there anyone who truly stands by me? As night fell, Jane curled beneath silk sheets, listening to the winds moan through the shutters, questioning whether a real shoulder existed on which she could lean. Finally, Jane feared an uncertain future. She understood that conceiving a child was not enough. It had to be a son,
We stand at the
and that son
precipice
had
of
to survive. With
and
each
only
passing
together
day, she checked her
can we
body and
secure
told
the
herself,
future of our kingdom.
there must be a sign, even the smallest one. That anticipation felt like a blade piercing her heart, driving her to a state of relentless tension. Throughout that night, Jane could not close her eyes for even a moment. She sat at the edge of the bed, clutching her pillow, whispering a silent prayer.
The evidence
Grant me
is
strength
clear in
and
these
wisdom to
documents.
overcome this trial.
We will not comply
When
with
dawn
this
finally
unlawful
broke,
mandate.
Jane wiped away her tears, straightened her back, and prepared for the day ahead, the day she would face court officials, health inspectors, and her own anxious heart. After that anxious wedding night, Jane Seymour's life gradually took on an unexpectedly rich texture. Only a few weeks later, she discovered she was pregnant, a quiet, yet profoundly significant joy. This first fruit of marriage earned Jane praise throughout the court. The gentle queen has fulfilled her mission. Henry VIII, long beset by turmoil, softened toward her, granting rare moments of peace. She became a beacon of comfort for the king's heart, making the Tudor palace seem less cold. In the following months, Jane enjoyed a rare respite. She would retreat to the Hampton Court gardens, admire the water lilies, and chat gently with the gardeners, while Henry, whenever free, would drop by to share tea and watch the sunset with her. No longer under the urgent pressure to conceive, Jane savoured the simple joys of life. A morning cup of tea, a hot gingerbread biscuit, and the cheerful song of birds in the garden. In July of the year 1537, Jane gave birth to the long-awaited Tudor prince, Prince Edward. This news seemed to redeem an entire dynasty. Henry VIII was indescribably delighted, shortening the ceremonial procession through the city for his new son and bestowing generous rewards upon the Seymour family. Jane's renown soared. She had transformed from the demure figure beside the throne into the celebrated mother of the realm. However, Jane's happiness was short-lived. Only days after childbirth, her health began to decline rapidly. A caesarean birth under the rudimentary medical conditions of the 16th century left her with a severe infection. High fever persisted, and excruciating joint pains tormented her, robbing her of sleep night after night. On the days she lay weakened in her bed, Henry would take her hand and whisper words of comfort. But even his love could not heal her physical wounds. 30 days after the prince's birth, Jane drew her final breath in the king's arms on the 16th day of October in the year 1537. The palace was shaken. The entire court wept in grief. The mournful trumpets sobbed, and mourning banners were flown across the city. Jane departed at only 35 years of age, leaving behind a lonely king and an infant Edward, named in her honour Edward Seymour, son of his mother. Jane Seymour's tragic death cast a long shadow over Henry and posterity alike. She was interred at St. George's Chapel, Windsor, with full state honours. Her coffin draped in crimson velvet and adorned with white lilies, symbols of purity and sacrifice. On the day of her funeral, Henry VIII could not conceal his sorrow.
Quickly,
He
clear
wore
a
his
path
mourning
through the
cap,
crowd.
lamenting throughout the procession, and more than once attempted to approach the coffin for a final glance, but had to restrain his anguish. Jane's passing left a profound void in Henry's heart. She was the only wife he mourned without immediately dissolving the marriage, and also the one who finally gave him the son he had yearned for his entire life. Jane closed her chapter as queen with this final wish: teach Edward to be a good man and preserve peace for England. And so, from the gentle girl elevated to queen, to the brief glow of marital happiness, and finally to her tragic sacrifice born of duty and devotion, Jane Seymour ended her journey in sorrow. Now, prepare yourself for the next chapter as we meet Henry VIII's fourth wife, Anne of Cleves, with her brief yet dramatic and equally amusing marriage story. Did you know that Henry VIII's fourth wife, Anne of Cleves, was born in the year 1190 as the second of 6 children of Duke John III of Cleves and Princess Maria of Jülich-Berg? Anne grew up at Dusseldorf Castle in the Ruhr region of Germany, raised among medieval ruins in the temperate climate of Europe. The House of Cleves was not as wealthy as the Spanish or English royal families, but it maintained close diplomatic ties with its neighbours, landing Anne on the shortlist for politically advantageous marriages. From childhood, Anne was schooled all day in her native German, and then learned Latin and French to communicate with visiting royalty. She did not study Latin as deeply as Catherine of Aragon, nor achieve the literary sophistication of Anne Boleyn, but her multilingual skills proved invaluable for diplomatic messaging. She had one brother, William, who later succeeded as Duke of Cleves, and 4 sisters, all trained as European nobility in the arts of theatre, calligraphy, and the preparation of medicinal herbs. Anne's path to the English throne began when Henry VIII sought to strengthen his anti-French alliance in the year 1539. Through the recommendation of the Duke of Norfolk, a senior English courtier, Henry received a letter proposing marriage to Anne of Cleves. That letter described Anne as one of the fairest princesses of northern Europe. Intrigued by such extraordinary beauty, Henry viewed a portrait painted by Hans Holbein and promptly agreed to the match. Anne, a mere 16 years old, had not long dreamed of becoming Queen of England, yet political necessity saw her granted the title Lady of Annelvelt before she journeyed to London. When Anne learned of the marriage approval, she felt a moment of confusion and fear.
If this
Am I
passage
truly
is
suited to this
interpreted
notorious
correctly,
king?
it
She left
changes
Dusseldorf Castle,
everything we know.
bid farewell to her family, and carried memories of her mother and younger siblings as she arrived at Hampton Court to cheers and fanfare. Yet she had barely absorbed the novelty of her new surroundings when she heard Henry wish to test the reality himself, fearing that a painted portrait could deceive. Legend holds that upon meeting Anne in person, Henry expressed disappointment and compared her to a simple country maid. This rumour stung Anne's pride and prompted her to wonder, have I been betrayed by those flattering initial descriptions? Anne faced considerable pressure. First, she had to prove her northern beauty was no mere illusion. Every step on the velvet carpet, every courteous smile to court officials was scrutinized. Will this demeanor please the king? Second, she faced the burden of proving her diplomatic competence. She must converse elegantly with foreign powers and maintain the anti-French alliance. Third, she feared swift disgrace. If Henry found her wanting, she could be sent back to Cleves and erased from English history. In her early days in London, Anne devoted herself to mastering English dress and practicing her halting English accent while reassessing Holbein's portrait. Do I look more lovely in paint? She realized she must confront reality. The throne was a somber seat, not a fairy tale crystal castle. Each evening she sat by her window, gazing at the lights across the River Thames and asking herself, can I find happiness in this marriage, or am I merely a pawn in a political game? Small moments of regret crept into Anne's thoughts. She remembered her golden hair under the Cleves sun, her mother's comforting hand, and her sister's laughter. Yet she reminded herself, I did not come here to be weak. I am Cleves's ambassador and must protect my homeland. It was this sense of responsibility that helped Anne maintain calm and humility. Thus began the life of Henry VIII's fourth queen. Beset by fears of displeasing Henry, of court ridicule, of linguistic missteps, of lost honour, and of being sent home. Yet Anne chose to confront these fears. She smiled when praised, smiled when criticised, and smiled even when her royal title was rescinded. She learned to transform her fears into strength, and to turn the court's nightmares into opportunities to assert her own dignity, no small feat in the volatile Tudor court. On the 15th of December, 1539, as the first oil lamp flickered in Hampton Court's Great Hall, Anne of Cleves entered her bridal chamber with a heart heavy with both hope and dread. The door closed behind her with a solid thud, wedding merriment still echoing outside. But in that instant, Anne felt more alone than ever before. First, the fear of appearance. Do I resemble Holbein's portrait? Anne remembered Hans Holbein's painting. Harmonious features, fair skin, and perfectly arranged ash blonde hair. But the mirrored reflection by her bed revealed a stranger. Thicker hair, a slightly square face, and a complexion tinged with northern pallor. She wondered, will the king recognize me tonight? Each lamp's glow only highlighted perceived flaws, making Anne tremble at the thought she might have failed the portrait's promise. Second, the fear of rejection and return to Cleves. If the king's displeased, where will I go? Anne understood the Tudor court as a ruthless chessboard. A single twinge of the king's boredom, a whisper about fallen beauty, could see her dispatched back to Dusseldorf without a second thought. The prospect of heading home to her family's disappointed faces haunted her. Third, the fear of language and cultural difference. Will I grasp the courtier's whispers and hushed laughter? Her English, punctuated by a German accent, made every word a potential misstep. When Henry approached, she had to rein in body language, a slight bow here, a careful smile there, and wonder if she could convey genuine humility. Fourth, the fear of her queenly duty. Can I bear a son? The Tudor machinery awaited her womb's pulse. Each intimate gesture with Henry felt like a fertility test. She bore the weight of her parents' hopes, the king's expectations, and the court's anticipation. Beneath the faint candlelight, she envisioned the taunt, "No prince, and you'll be sent home." Hell. Fifth, the fear of loneliness at court. Is there anyone truly by my side? Throughout Hampton Court's corridors, she heard only guards' footsteps and the whisper of attendants. No close friends, no nearby family. Anne felt like a lone stone in a raging river. That night, she clutched her
Keep your
velvet
cloak
blanket,
tight, the wind
listening to
bites
Henry's
today.
breathing as the last
Any
shred
word
of
from the North
security.
Road?
Sixth,
Only that the
the
fog
fear
is
of
thick
power
and the
plays.
roads are worse.
Who waits to undermine me? The Tudor court was a maze of intrigue. 3 years earlier, she had served Anne Boleyn and witnessed plots and betrayals. Now in the Queen's seat, Anne realized she stood at the storm's eye. Any courtier could be an adversary with a single word or a suspicious look. All through that night, Anne could not close her eyes. She sat by the casement, gazing at the moon partially veiled by oaks, whispering, "Grant me strength and wisdom." When dawn's first light crept in, Anne drew a deep breath, smoothed her silk gown, and readied herself for her first day as queen, even as her fears lingered like the mist that had yet to lift. After the anxious days of her wedding night and the relentless pressures of the throne, Anne of Cleves entered a new chapter of her life when her marriage to Henry VIII was officially annulled on the 9th of January, 1540. It was a decision unprecedented in English history. A queen freed from her role without
Now,
punishment or stain
take
of
up your
crime.
tablets and
Anne
carefully
received the title
transcribe the
King's
passage we
Sister,
discussed.
took up residence at Richmond Palace, and enjoyed a generous pension. Post-marriage life granted Anne freedoms few Tudor women ever experienced. She moved to Sion Abbey, a medieval convent on the banks of the River Thames, where she lived in quiet reflection, tended flower gardens, read the scriptures, and received distinguished visitors. The Cleves family sent letters of congratulations on her new life, while Henry VIII occasionally referred to her as his dear friend, praising her gracious demeanor and unwavering loyalty. Anne relished this period of unobserved freedom, freer than any wife he had ever had. Yet even with her newfound freedom, Anne could not escape feelings of emptiness and loneliness. On cold winter evenings at Sion Abbey, she recalled her bewildering wedding night and the winds howl through Hampton Court's windows. Many times she wondered, have I traded my life away for a political marriage? But she quickly steadied herself. An unsuccessful marriage could not strip her of her right to live on her own terms. Anne devoted much energy to charitable works. She sponsored orphanages, provided scholarships for poor girls, and contributed to the founding of hospitals. Her reputation spread throughout London as a model of compassion and patience. It is said that when Queen Catherine Parr ascended the throne, she would often visit Anne for advice on maintaining harmony at court. In the year 1577, Henry VIII died, ending the tumultuous Tudor dynasty. Although no longer queen, Anne retained her honorary rank and continued living at Sion Abbey. She witnessed 5 successive reigns, from Edward VI to Mary I and then Elizabeth I. Whenever political upheaval arose, Anne maintained a deft diplomatic distance, avoiding all entanglements to preserve her own safety. Finally, on the 16th of July, 1597, Anne of Cleves drew her last breath at Vernon House in Chelsea at the age of 64. Though she was neither executed nor
glasses,
felled
everyone.
by acute illness,
To
her
prosperity.
death evoked
To
sympathy.
prosperity.
A life lived behind palace walls, across tempestuous marriages, then withdrawn into too much solitude. Many historians suggest that it was this late-life loneliness removed from the court, left only with memories that was the true, tragic death hidden in her soul. Anne's funeral took place at St Mary's Church in Lambeth, in a solemn yet simple ceremony reflecting her humble and virtuous life. She was interred beside her kin, not under grand tombs, but in a modest vault inscribed, Anne of Cleves, wife of Henry VIII, gentle friend of the realm. Thus, from the Cleves maiden chosen as a political pawn, to the Queen of England whose marriage was annulled, and finally to the elderly noblewoman who closed her life in tranquility, Anne of Cleves carved out a distinct fate in Tudor history. She did not fight for the throne, but triumphed over herself with compassion and resilience. Now prepare to meet the fifth Queen, Catherine Howard, whose brief but intense tragedy will be the most dramatic of Henry VIII's 6 marriages. Did you know that Catherine Howard, the fifth wife of Henry VIII, was born around the year 1523 in Lambeth, near London? She was the youngest of 7 children of Lord Edmund Howard, a minor noble of the Howard family, and Lady Joyce Culpeper, of the Culpeper lineage in Kent. The Howards were renowned for their loyalty to the Tudor dynasty, yet also infamous for scandal and living beyond their means. From childhood, Catherine was raised in a household much poorer than her noble status suggested. Her father was often absent, her mother struggled to maintain the family's reputation, and her older brothers looked down on their frail youngest sister. Unlike other princesses, Catherine did not attend prestigious schools. She learned from tattered books and volunteer tutors at home, mastering basic Latin and a few phrases of French enough to read the scriptures and participate in royal ceremonies. Her education did not match that of her sister-in-law Anne Boleyn, nor the formal training of Catherine of Aragon, but Catherine possessed a captivating grace, a delicate face, and a cheerful innocence that endeared her to everyone. Catherine's introduction to the list of royal brides began when she served as a lady-in-waiting to Anne of Cleves at Hampton Court. In the year 1541, Henry VIII, having divorced Anne and witnessed the tragic death of Jane Seymour, continued his search for fresh delight in marriage. He had heard rumours of Catherine's free-spirited beauty and enchanting smile, and, recalling his own youthful innocence, quickly fell under her spell. To the court's eyes, Catherine became the king's new diversion, a charming princess notably younger than 20. On the 27th of April, 1541, following a modest coronation ceremony at St John's Chapel in Whitehall, Catherine officially assumed the title Queen Howard. In that moment, she stood before a mirror for the first time, wearing a golden crown wrought with images of exotic birds, and the Tudor rose, feeling both elated and utterly terrified. She wondered, am I truly worthy of this crown? As court music swelled and nobles cheered, Catherine heard only her pounding heart and nameless dread. The pressures descended in waves. First, she had to prove she was not the naïve of gossip. Every step on the velvet carpet was scrutinized for courtly grace. Second, Catherine feared the Howard family's legacy of political intrigue would draw her into court plots. After all, only 3 years earlier, Anne Boleyn, also a Howard, had been condemned for treason. Third, she faced the terror that a single misstep could cost her life. Henry VIII was famed for his wrath, and his word was law, whether it praised or condemned. Catherine could not help but regret her carefree childhood by the Thames, the afternoons spent among daisies with her sister Mary, and the street vendors' calls in the market. She asked herself, have I sacrificed true happiness for a thirst for status? But almost at once, she reminded herself, is there any other choice? Here I stand before all, so turn fear into resolve. End of chapter. During her first nights, Catherine stayed awake, sitting by the Whitehall window to watch fireflies against the dark sky, whispering, hold fast to my smile, master my panic. She learned to conceal her thoughts and to offer Henry a tender gaze despite the loneliness in her heart. Each morning she applied her makeup with care, a light rose tint and a touch of gloss, to see herself as queen. at least in the mirror maintaining a flawless image. In the days that followed, Catherine was occasionally permitted into the privy garden, finding solace beneath fruit trees and listening to birdsong. In those moments, her heart felt eased, as if escaping the royal web. Yet whenever Henry called, "Catherine!" from the corridor, she forced her brightest smile, squared her shoulders, lifted her chin, and returned his greeting, even as fear flickered in her eyes. Thus opened the journey of the fifth queen, Catherine Howard,
Steady your hand,
a
boy.
20-year-old youngest
The
daughter of the
infection
Howards,
must be drawn
standing
out
beneath
before we
brilliant
close the
lights,
wound.
carrying the worry, will my honor endure by tomorrow? Yet she chose to face it. Every smile, every step, every greeting driven by the desire to hold onto the throne and to find her own happiness. This is the beginning of the next chapter in the tragedy and hope of the youngest Tudor queen. On the 27th of April, 1541, as candlelight flickered across Whitehall's vaulted ceiling, Catherine Howard entered her bridal chamber with a heart in turmoil. The heavy wooden door slammed behind her, sealing off the triumphant drumbeats of her coronation and leaving only the sound of her own quickened breath. First, the fear of comparison. Am I worthy against Anne Boleyn or Jane Seymour? Catherine was well aware of the fates of her predecessors, one executed for treason, the other dying in childbirth. Each step on the velvet carpet felt accompanied by whispers. Can you surpass their shadows? The gazes of guards and courtiers made her tremble at the thought of being revealed as merely a naive girl, unfit for the crown. Second,
We are
the
delighted
fear of
by your
disappointing Henry. Is my smile enchanting enough for this king? Henry VIII was known for his extravagant tastes and exacting standards. Gazing in the small handheld mirror at her crowned reflection, Catherine's cheer felt hollow. Whenever he approached the bed, she forced a welcoming smile, though her heart felt shattered. She feared his eyes would judge her as a judge pronouncing a sentence. Third, the fear of a scandalous past. Will the rumours of this political pawn come back to haunt me? The Tudor court did not forget quickly nor forgive lightly. Catherine had heard how a fellow Howard had been condemned. That night she imagined whispers accusing her of adultery or treason, a fear of being imprisoned in the Tower of London returning to haunt her. Fourth, the fear of failing her royal duty. Can I conceive and bear a prince? Beyond seeking Henry's affection, Catherine bore the weight of preserving the Tudor lineage. Every intimate gesture was a test of her fertility.
They intend to strike here,
her heart raced,
at the northern pass.
fearing the
But my
candlelight
lord,
seemed to mock
We
her.
lack the men to hold it.
If you
We
cannot
must
conceive,
retreat
you
while we
lose
still
everything.
can.
Fifth, the fear of loneliness amid palace splendor. Is there anyone truly by my side to comfort me? After the grand music faded, Catherine was alone under the dim lights. With no confidants and no family for support, she felt isolated as though trapped on a deserted isle. Each breeze through a crack sounded to her like sobs of despair. Sixth, the fear of an uncertain future. What will I become when dawn breaks? In the final moments before sleep, if sleep could come, Catherine pondered, am I heading toward joy or into hell? Dawn had yet to break, but her heart was already lost in a maze of doubt. All through that night, Catherine could not sleep. She clutched her pillow, listening to her heartbeat like a drum of warning. Her wedding night, instead of a song of joy, echoed only with her solitary steps and a whispered prayer. Grant me strength to conquer every fear. When morning light crept in, Catherine gathered her composure, squared her shoulders, and prepared to face a new day, though her fears remained undiminished. Catherine Howard's marriage to Henry VIII, born from so much expectation and fear on her wedding night, ended swiftly in tragedy. Less than a year later, on the morning of the 13th of February, 1542, she was accused by those who had once praised her beauty and charm of adultery with Thomas Culpeper, one of the king's trusted attendants, and with Francis Derham, a childhood friend. These charges, largely engineered by the anti-Howard faction to undermine her family's influence, proved enough for Henry VIII to lose patience and order her arrest. During her confinement in the Tower of London, Catherine endured utter loneliness. Completely isolated, she heard nothing but the echo of guards' footsteps on the cold stone floors and the tolling bell announcing her impending execution, each peal like a hammer striking her fate. Every closing of the iron door left her stranded between life and death. Once trusting in Henry's love and mercy, she now leaned against the cold wall, wondering, where did I go wrong, believing in the promises of the throne? Throughout those days, She wrote letters to her mother and to her sister Mary, begging for their prayers for her soul's peace. In one, she cautioned, "Be ever mindful at court. Let not my mistakes be repeated." Unlike Anne Boleyn, Catherine did not plead for a pardon in the public eye or invoke her family's clout. She chose to preserve a final shred of dignity by accepting her responsibilities as queen, even in the face of grave injustice. On the morning of the 13th of February, 1542, Catherine Howard donned a simple black morning gown, her hair neatly styled. She walked slowly along the tower's corridor, each step light yet resolute, toward the scaffold. Standing before the executioner's block, she seemed astonishingly serene. A faint smile played upon her lips, as if apologizing to the fate she had been dealt. The sword fell in a single stroke, ending the life of the 20-year-old Queen, Henry VIII's youngest bride across his 6 marriages. Catherine's death was not merely a personal tragedy, but also a stark testament to the cruelty of absolute power. Her collapse beneath the executioner's blade still haunts the tower's silent halls, a reminder that even the loftiest throne can be but a fleeting mockery of fortune and a stage for courtly intrigue. In the aftermath, the Howard family suffered severe consequences. Estates were seized, reputations stained, and many kin were stripped of titles and banished from court. As for Henry VIII, his fury spent, he seemed left in a new solitude. He had closed one marriage only to open another, yet few marital ends matched the savagery of Catherine's beheading. Once more, his authority was asserted through the terror of a young bride's death and her abrupt disappearance from royal spectacle. Catherine's funeral was not a grand state affair, but a solemn, measured rite. Her coffin draped in black velvet, surrounded by white wreaths symbolizing lost innocence and heartfelt mourning. She was laid to rest at Street, Mary at Lambeth Church beside her relatives, not in an imposing tomb but in a modest grave, befitting a proud life cut tragically short. Thus, from the bright-eyed girl who entered the court with dreams and ambitions to the merciless end at the executioner's block, Catherine Howard's life stands as a cautionary tale. Political marriage may promise glory, but it can just as swiftly unleash disaster. And so the Tudor Chronicle turns its final page on a queen only in life by name, and looks ahead to the 6th and last wife, Catherine Parr, the sole survivor of Henry VIII's matrimonial trials, whose tale of true affection, sharp intellect, and skillful peacemaking awaits in our next chapter. Did you know that Catherine Parr, the 6th and final wife of Henry VIII, was born in the year 1512, some sources record 1513, in the County Palatine of Kendal, Westmoreland? She was the youngest of 3 children of Sir Thomas Parr, a loyal statesman of the Tudor court, and his wife, Maud Green, daughter of the Deputy Treasurer, Thomas Green. Catherine had 2 older brothers, William and John Parr, both of whom served the crown in high office, and one sister, Anne Parr, who later became Princess of Wales by marrying the heir apparent. From her earliest years, Catherine enjoyed an unusually advanced education for a 16th century woman. She learned to read Latin, French, and Italian, became well versed in the scriptures, the works of Erasmus, and scholastic literature. Her mother, Maud Green, devoted herself to instilling in her daughter a broad knowledge of European culture, courtly manners, and, in particular, the burgeoning ideas of religious reform. By her 20s, Catherine was composing poetry, editing theological texts, and even organizing public lectures, roles that would have been considered bold for a woman of her time. Catherine's path to the English throne was paved by 2 earlier marriages. In the year 1513, she married Sir Edward Burgh, a middle-aged nobleman. After his death 5 years later, she wed Lord John Neville, Duke of Somerset, in 1528. When Liberty, Duke of Somerset Neville's brother, fell from favour and was imprisoned for political intrigue, Catherine once again found herself a widow. Left with only her extensive learning and sterling reputation for virtue, she won the respect of both nobles and statesmen. In the year 1543, following the death of Jane Seymour and a succession of failed nuptials, Henry VIII sought not merely a new queen, but a companion for his declining years. He encountered Catherine in her role as gentlewoman to the young Prince Edward and caretaker of the 3 royal daughters, Mary, Elizabeth, and the infant princess. Catherine's gentle nature, compassionate heart, and talent for smoothing courtly disputes swiftly captured Henry's affection. On the 12th of July, 1543, They were formally wed in a modest but dignified ceremony at St. Mary's Chapel in Hampton Court. The moment Catherine stepped onto the raised dais, she felt a rush of joy mingled with trepidation. She wondered, am I truly worthy of this king who has endured so many trials? Beneath the soft glow of candlelight, memories of past marital failures, courtly gossip, and the loss of a widow's independence surfaced. Yet she steadied herself with the thought, I have not come here for personal ambition, but to serve the realm and safeguard the future of the young heirs. Pressures descended from every quarter. First, Catherine must establish herself not as the king's final infatuation, but as an intellectual companion, one who could sustain religious and political stability after years of turmoil. Second, she faced the fear that resentful factions of the Howard and Neville families, both linked to her by birth, would exploit any misstep to manipulate the court. Third, Catherine bore the responsibility of serving as a nurturing mother to the three adolescent princesses while continuing to guide Prince Edward in learning and virtue. In those early nights following her wedding, Catherine's heart did not soar as it had in youth. She stayed up late drafting theological addresses for the king, translating biblical commentaries to refine the Church of England's liturgy, and collaborating with bishops on ecclesiastical reforms. She asked herself, will my sermons help quell the religious strife tearing the kingdom apart? Balancing her reformist convictions with traditional loyalties, she feared alienating both camps. Catherine did not regret her choice. She believed deeply in her mission. She used her influence to temper the king's harshest punishments of reformers, much as Henry himself once pardoned clandestine preachers. She organized private tutoring sessions for Princess Mary and Princess Elizabeth, acting as a bridge of reconciliation among the three royal children who had once suffered their father's estrangement. The strain reached its zenith when Henry VIII died in early 1547. Catherine became regent and stepmother to the young King Edward, guiding the nation through its critical transition. She worried whether the realm would hold steady under the new monarch, whether reformist power would be fully realized or crushed by the conservative faction. Yet she remained resolute, convening parliament, issuing reform statutes, and simultaneously overseeing the king's health. In her final months, Catherine battled illness and the weight of state affairs. She passed away on the 14th of September, 1547, at the age of 35. Though she did not meet her end by sword as previous queens had, her death was nonetheless tragic. A woman who gave her utmost in service to royal honor and national peace.
Guide us through
Thus,
the shadows,
from the Kendall maiden nurtured in learning and virtue,
from the coming
Catherine
darkness.
Parr became Henry VIII's last queen, a confidant, a mother of the realm, and the only wife to outlive the king through 6 turbulent marriages. Her life stands as a testament to the power of intellect, compassion, and the art of maintaining harmony within the Tudor court. On the 12th of July, 1543, as the candlelight flickered across the vaulted ceiling of St. Mary's Chapel, Catherine Parr stepped into her bridal chamber with a heart full of apprehension. The intricately carved wooden door closed behind her, silencing the applause of congratulation and making way for her own sigh of vague yet weighty fear. First, the fear of overwhelming responsibility. Catherine knew that tonight was not merely her wedding night, but the moment she officially embraced the mission of Mother of the Realm. Every breath beside Henry was a promise to bear an heir. In her mind, she asked, do I have the strength to carry the hopes of the entire dynasty? The wavering light playing upon her neatly styled hair made her pause, wondering if the future was too heavy to bear. Second, the fear of comparison to her predecessors. Catherine understood she followed in the steps of 5 other queens. Anne Boleyn had been executed for treason. Jane Seymour had died in childbirth. Anna of Cleves had been set aside. Catherine Howard had been arrested and beheaded. She could not help but tremble at the thought, will my fate be any different from theirs? Each glance around the lavish chamber seemed to summon those past destinies as harsh warnings. Third, the fear of widowhood. Catherine had already been widowed twice, first by Sir Edward Burgh, then by Lord John Neville. Tonight, she wondered, will this marriage last longer, or will I become a widow for the 3rd time? The uncertainty tightened her heart, bringing back memories of hurried nuptials and distant rumors of estrangement that made her shiver. Fourth, the fear of displeasing the king. Henry VIII was notorious for his absolutism. Catherine recalled a warning from an experienced courtier. A gentle word may soothe him, one wrong word may ignite his wrath. Tonight, every greeting, every comforting touch was a negotiation. Will this smile and this look put the king at ease? She knotted her stomach in worry. Might a single misstep provoke his anger? Fifth, the fear of religious differences. Catherine held reformist views, while Henry remained ambivalent between reform and conservatism. On her wedding night, she feared any whispered theology might reach his ears and spark suspicion. Does the Queen harbour designs on the new church? The reformist message was a double-edged sword, threatening both her safety and the court's harmony. Sixth, the fear of loneliness in a vast palace. When the music died away, she was left alone beneath the falling candlelight. With no parents or siblings at her side, Catherine heard only her own breath and the wind whistling through the window. She wondered, is there anyone who will truly hold my hand when I falter? Her solitude in the seat of power magnified every fear. Seventh, the fear of losing personal freedom. Becoming queen meant surrendering control over many aspects of her life, her attire, her schedule, even her voice in minor decisions. Tonight, with her husband resting beside her, Catherine thought quietly, will I still be myself, or merely Catherine the Queen? The erosion of her autonomy felt like a blade to her heart. Throughout that night, Catherine could not close her eyes. She sat by the window, watching the moonlight glimpse through the oaks, whispering a prayer. Grant me strength and wisdom to fulfill my duty. When dawn finally broke, she drew a deep breath, smoothed her polished gown, and stepped out of her bridal chamber with her customary composure, ready to face her first day as Henry VIII's final queen, even though the fears in her heart remained undiminished. Conclusion: the life and tragic death of Catherine Parr. After Henry VIII's death in early 1547, Catherine Parr, his sixth and final queen, did not become a lonely widow burdened by injustice. Instead, she was entrusted with the additional responsibility of serving as regent of the realm under the new reign of Prince Edward. She held the office of vice-regent with broad powers, summoned parliament, and approved numerous critical statutes to stabilize a nation still riven by political and religious disputes. Catherine oversaw church reforms, tended to the young king's health, and fostered harmony among factions that once seemed irreconcilable. Her regency conferred upon her an unprecedented prestige and authority for a 16th century Englishwoman. She spent most of her time at Hampton Court and Greenwich Palace, conferring with ministers, drafting official correspondence, and responding to diplomatic letters, all with wisdom and patience that earned the admiration of her courtiers. Under Catherine's leadership, the kingdom gradually steadied. Religious tensions eased, the Church of England's reform statutes were refined, and Prince Edward received a solid education under her tutelage. Yet after years in the royal spotlight and the weight of immense responsibility, Catherine yearned for a more ordinary life. She chose to marry for the third time, this time to Lord Thomas Seymour, Lord High Admiral of England and brother to the Duke of Somerset, who had once served as regent. Their secret wedding took place in early 1547, free of pomp but rich in affection. Catherine sought personal happiness, and Thomas longed for a genuine family home. Only months after their marriage, Catherine became pregnant. The couple joyfully prepared for their first child, a symbol of new beginnings, following so many courtly upheavals. Catherine thought to herself, this time I shall be a mother first, and only then a courtier. Thomas Seymour devoted himself to her care. He frequently visited her at Greenwich, brought her books to read, and helped her practice reading aloud at night in preparation for teaching their child. However, pregnancy and the rudimentary medical conditions of the era carried grave risks. When the pains of labour struck, Catherine was transported to Longleat House, her chosen birthplace. Happiness seemed complete when the newborn's cry filled the air, and she collapsed into Thomas's arms. But within days, she developed a high fever and lapsed into delirium. The symptoms of a postpartum infection, what today might be called puerperal sepsis, sapped her strength day by day. Catherine Parr breathed her last on the 14th of September, 1548, at the age of 36. Her death was not by the sword, nor by political machination, but by the very life she had just ushered into the world. Thomas Seymour mourned deeply. Nothing is more painful than losing the beloved wife who has just given me our precious child. Catherine's death was the tragedy of a woman who had once held the highest offices in the realm, only to fall victim to the perils of motherhood. Their funeral took place at St. Thomas. Mary's Church in Lambeth, in a solemn yet understated ceremony. Her coffin draped in purple velvet, a royal mourning colour, and adorned with white lilies symbolising lost purity and virtue. She was interred beside her Parr relatives, beneath a modest gravestone inscribed with her contributions to the realm. Catherine Parr, Queen Consort of King Henry VIII, Mother and Regent of the nation, true friend and mother to all. The tragic end of Catherine Parr closed a brilliant chapter in Tudor history. She not only survived 6 tumultuous marriages, but also left a legacy of intellect, compassion, and the ability to unite a fractured court. From the learned girl of Kendal to the powerful queen, and then the mother of the nation, Catherine Parr won her place in history through heart and mind. Her life and tragic end remain a lasting testament to the strength and sacrifice of a woman who truly served her king and her country. Across the 6 tumultuous marriages of Henry VIII, from Catherine of Aragon to Catherine Parr, each queen confronted common fears: anxiety over the duty to produce heirs, the dread of being compared to predecessors who once occupied the throne, loneliness within a vast palace, and the fear of losing personal autonomy. On their wedding nights, they all felt the crown's weight upon their shoulders, one step into paradise and simultaneously into a labyrinth of suspicion and intrigue. Fear of the duty to secure the succession. From Catherine of Aragon, pressured to bear a son, to Jane Seymour, heralded when she produced Prince Edward, each queen heard the court's refrain: "You must provide the heir." In modern life, workplace or family pressures similarly compel us to prove our worth and to overcome them. We must share our burdens, seek help, and find moments of rest. Fear of comparison and obscurity. Anne Boleyn, Catherine Howard, and Anna of Cleves, each panicked when their real lives failed to match flattering portraits, when rumours disparaged them, or when they felt like the king's latest amusement. Today, amid social media's flood of perfect images, we too can fall into the comparison trap. The lesson: each person is unique. Our value lies not in praise or criticism, but in how we trust and love ourselves. Fear of loneliness in power. Though wearing the crown, many queens felt isolated in their opulent households, lacking a confidant's shoulder. In modern life, however successful we may be, we still need a support network of family, friends, and colleagues. Always stay connected, sharing joys and struggles with people you trust. Fear of losing personal freedom. Becoming queen meant surrendering control over attire, schedule, and even one's own voice. Today, though we may not wear crowns, we can still pressure ourselves into societal molds. The takeaway: honor your inner voice and set healthy boundaries in work and relationships. Each queen's unique qualities. Catherine of Aragon was resolute like a warrior.
We have heard
Anne
your
Boleyn
petition.
hungered for freedom
The
and
Crown
knowledge.
will consider your
Jane
request
Seymour offered
and issue a
gentleness
decree
and empathy.
in due time.
Anna of Cleves exemplified humility and adaptability. Catherine Howard blazed with youthful innocence and passion. And Catherine Parr shone as an intellectual companion and mother of the nation. Each story illuminates a distinct aspect of womanhood's strength, perseverance, sacrifice, or intellect, reminding us that human beauty and worth are richly varied. Message and value for modern life. This video is more than a slice of royal history. It reflects the universal fears and aspirations of humanity,
Our actions today will
transcending
echo
eras.
through eternity.
When facing pressure, let us share. Find someone you trust and speak up. Don't hoard your worries alone. Maintain self-belief. Your value is not determined by others' praise, but by how you act and treat yourself. Set boundaries. Learn to say no when needed, safeguarding your autonomy and mental well-being. Cultivate wisdom and compassion. Keep learning, open your heart to others, and trust in the power of empathy and knowledge. We hope that today's video has offered you lessons on living courageously through upheaval, maintaining inner peace amid life's storms, and becoming a steadfast friend and ally to yourself and those around you. Wishing you a restful night, filled with gentle, meaningful dreams. Don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss our latest and greatest videos.